Welcome to the Boss Mode podcast, where we discuss the future of work.
Black Friday is coming up soon, Q4 for us, like D2C world playoff season. So it's going to be a very interesting Black Friday. Isn't as dire as what we all thought it was going to be at the start of the year. Thank goodness for now. I think at large, everyone's been going, ooh, I wonder what Black Friday is going to be like this year, ever since the Fed stopped printing, right? Back in, what was that, 21, 22. So it's nothing's a given anymore. And we always tell our brands that just because it's Black Friday does not mean, and everyone is shopping does not mean that they'll shop with you. So a lot of the planning, in fact, starts June, July. As we march closer towards that date, we just want to make sure everything's tightened up. So good old fun time in DTC world. What about you? How does your week been?
Well, before we talk about my week, I'm just fascinated with what's happening in your world because you run a successful agency driving performance for direct-to-consumer. And I think that you guys will have a read on what's happening with the consumer economy almost for a lot of other companies because you'll see the aggregate of what's happening across your client base. You've got years, decades of data on these advertisers as well. So understanding what's happening with the economy is something that you'll have a fantastic read on. But additionally, before AI became this hot topic for everybody, one of the industries that saw disruption from AI quite early was performance marketing.
Oh, 100%.
What was it? Because I ran a Facebook marketing partner, TikTok marketing partner, Meta business partner, TikTok marketing partner prior to that was acquired last year. And we did over 1 billion videos for some of the largest e-commerce platforms like Amazon, Alibaba, et cetera, et cetera. One of the common refrains that I heard from performance marketers who were sitting at the other side of the table, they would come to me and say, David, I'm a little bit worried because frankly, the job of the performance marketer these days is to get out of the way, configure as few things as possible, and let Meta's black box algorithm do the work. And I think that was the thinking back then. And I imagine agencies needed to adapt a lot as a result of that. And one of the areas in which they adapted was creative. Another was around strategy, brand strategy, which you're exceptionally good at.
Yeah, 100%. I think 2020 forced the industry into that also because of, most people remember 2020 for COVID. I think a lot of performance marketers remember COVID for iOS 14, the obfuscation of mobile data, where pixels stopped doing what pixels were able to do. Back then, Facebook's ability to optimize for outcomes, right?
Yep.
That their advertisers were seeking, because every single person that was on an iOS device, their data just did not get passed through anymore because Apple just went, nope, we're not going to allow. Everyone remembers the allow app to track or disallow app from tracking.
App transparency.
Exactly.
Yeah.
ATT, iOS 14, all packaged into the one thing. And that really forced it through. And to your point, many individuals who were trying to cling on to that notion of my worth as a performance marketer, really, they were primarily media buyers, is tinkering around in the ad account and doing all of my little tinkering and finessing and all that to make the outcomes work. But what it surfaced really quickly was that it separated the marketers from the in-account media buyers, I think. That's what it really did. And by and large, the industry adapted very quickly. I'm very glad, in fact, that those changes happened because everyone was grumbling at the time. Oh my God, this is so unfair. Whenever things don't play out in your favor, of course, it turns out to be unfair. And they grumbled, but by and large, a lot of adapting. You still have the old hats that try to cling on to, just finessing and massaging and trying to do stuff in the ad account for various different reasons. But I do love the fact that a lot of it is get out of the way when it comes to letting a platform find the right audiences for your business objective that you set in platform and let it do its thing. You just have to understand the fundamentals of what the platform actually does. If you can understand incrementality, if you can understand the way that it reaches audiences, if you can understand volume and in-platform ROAS and the inverse relationship between those things, go be a marketer. Come up with angles, think about selling propositions, get fun and creative and diverse with your content and your creative. So it's become, in some ways, some would lament that it's a harder game because they don't get to just sit in the ad account and do that anymore. In some other ways, it becomes I would argue it's a funner game because now you get to be a marketer and have a tool that does cool stuff for you. AI has, I think, caught AI as a search term and as a term in the zeitgeist really picked up steam very noticeably started this year. It started showing up more on mainstream news. It started showing in various different types of forms. I think prior to that, it's this nifty little autocomplete chat thing. Oh, it does some like photos that look fake. Oh, it does some images that look like AI slop. It started picking up this year. But I think performance marketers know this AI inside of the Meta platform has been around for a long time.
I think that performance marketers have felt the need to evolve beyond tinkering inside the ad account into being more strategic thinkers, to becoming their own boss, directing their own work on the truly important issues versus sitting there and just moving numbers around on a screen, tweaking targeting parameters and all that. It got to this point probably, between 5 and 10 years ago, in that range, I think, when performance marketers who knew and understood the ads manager or the business manager over at Meta, Trade Desk, how to configure, optimize Google ads and all that. People who knew which levers to pull and which levers existed in the first place, maybe even just that much knowledge, they could command these massive salaries. They were the growth hackers. They were those who exercised the dark arts.
Some type of algorithm whisperer or something. Yeah.
And the thing is, that distracted even Fortune 500 businesses, very large companies, public companies, to rapidly growing startups that just burned all this money and focusing on performance and ignoring the foundation of not just marketing, but business. And anyhow, we digress. We should talk a little bit more about.
Welcome to the David and D Media Buying Podcast.
It's just on Google Meet.
Yeah, totally.
Recording a chat every week. But I think that we have a good theme around the future of work. It's human society is getting punched in the face right now by the sudden rise of these bots that are capable of cognitive work. And I think that the human race, the human society, risks lying down and getting trampled, not getting up. The thing is, we have to get up, and there is something to be done. Just like performance marketers, they either evolved or they didn't. I think that at large, we covered some of these themes last week in our pod. And coming out of that pod, we talked for an hour and a half, an hour and 20 minutes. The meeting recording was in Google Drive. So then I hopped over to an AI clipping website and I just connected Google Drive to it, right? And about 20, 30 minutes later, presto, it gave me all of this. It scored viral moments or moments that were interesting. It captioned it all. I did a really good job of it. I think it generated 50 clips and I think I got rid of 6 of them or something like that. But yeah, in general, it was really good. Here's one of the clips. Here's an example of a clip. In high school, already have accelerated their education through short form video.
See, that's where I'm a bit more bullish, where there are individuals who are taking matters into their own hands.
Right. In the next 3 to 5 years, I think we'll have 50% unemployment. It's fairly easy to imagine because we think about it's painful to imagine. And this is the kind of work that we used to clipping that 1 hour and 20-minute session would have taken at minimum 1 full workday. Probably a couple of work days, right? Of doing nothing. But I think I edited it. That happened. 1 video I edited. Everything else, these are ready to post. Neither you nor I think would have the time to clip all of these ourselves, right? We've got a packed schedule. We've got a lot of work to do during the week. And if we're sitting there just clipping, That's monotonous work. We might do it for 1, maybe 2 episodes, but after a while, we're going to start saying, hey, I'm a little too busy to do it right now. I'll do the clipping in a few days, or I'll do it tomorrow. And then next thing you know, a week goes by, 2 weeks go by, 3 weeks go by, a month, and then we just stop recording the pod. But when it's made this easy, it allows us, the two of us, to focus on the human part, which is having an interesting conversation.
Yeah, for sure. And the volume is so key, right? Even taking out the AI component, brands and businesses, I'm throwing personal brands inside of that category also, are savvying up to the importance of volume for distribution and variety for distribution. So clipping is an actual gig now that people can actually do and post on their own accounts. So they'll take other people's footage, like a David Goggins or a Joe Rogan or a Chris Williamson or a Lex Friedman, and would get access to that footage, clip it up in their own type of way, B-roll with subtitles, certain different types of angles, post that and get paid somewhat like an affiliate, get paid on a CPM basis. Imagine having the human army out there doing that distribution, and then also this robot army doing that as well. That's volume and diversity for sure.
Yeah, I think that we're right on the bleeding edge. I think that we've seen for a long time, probably the past few years, starting with some of the names that you mentioned, Goggins, Rogan, Tate, guys like that, they have been using, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I imagine they've been using solutions like WOP.com, where they can pay people on a CPM basis based on the number of views they get on clips of their own original content. And that gets them distribution. That's smart. But we're on the bleeding edge of it because through some of these AI technologies that are available, we're able to automate that. We're able to bot that. Let the bots be bots. And then you and I on the bleeding edge spend more time being humans.
For sure. That's what I love about technology, just in general, the fact that it democratizes a lot of what would be reserved for the few. If you can afford to have an editor or several editors, you either can afford that, or you have such a big fan base that the internet just voluntarily clips your stuff because it gets them views as well to get their channel views. They would just cut up famous podcasts and slice it up and do their own version on YouTube. But with technology, with a $20, $30 a month subscription, any person can do the same as well. So if you're passionate about, I don't know, like plants with your neighbor, you can pick up a mic or just have a laptop, sit down, have a conversation, and then for a $20, $30 subscription, have a bunch of clips and go out there too, right? It's wild, and it's only getting crazier.
Yeah, I think that we're in this situation now where for creating content in particular, the costs have dropped so much that you don't need to be the CEO of a company. You don't need to be a professional creator. You don't need to have a team of people. The technologies are there to automate a lot of stuff. Heck, I remember I had a full-time video editor, videographer in South Korea where I spent a lot of time working. I had a team of motion graphics designers based out of Manila and a couple of motion graphics designers, video editors in New York. And so I was able to produce content, and the content, heck, even when I screwed up, they were able to help make sure that I did good. And they spent a lot of time doing that. I use an open blade to shave my head. And today I clipped myself shaving.
Yeah.
Guess what? It doesn't matter.
I actually have gray hair. An AI.
So it's this rise of AI, you're right, in that it's democratizing access to producing content. Yeah. But also that stretches to other industries. It democratizes access to building an app. Look at Lovable, fastest company in the history of capitalism to go from 0 to $100 million in ARR. In less than a year, they go to 100 million ARR, or from 1 to 100 million ARR, which is phenomenal. And that's happening because Lovable is democratizing app building, which used to be, we talk about the dark arts, we talk about people who are like the mages of, guess what? App development used to be that as well. And that's much less so the case today.
The they are doing vibe coding is doing to digital development what the Canon 5D did to video production and film production back in the day, and I'm old enough to remember that transition. And also CapCut to Adobe.
Yeah.
Same kind of deal. Adobe's reserved for the few nerdy ones now, but people who are pumping out volume, CapCut does the job. But all the professionals, and this is the funny part, all the professionals, the incumbents, would just poo that thing and go, oh, why even touch that? It can't do this. It can't do that. It can't do this. It can't do that. It's not secure. You'll get hacked. You don't know the code. It'll never be production grade ready. But the ones who are leading in don't care. They're going, hey, listen, yesterday I could do none of it. Today I can do 80% of it. That's 80% more than yesterday. Screw your 20%. I'll worry about that later.
Yeah, it's fresh thinking that's necessary. It's almost better that people lean into this. Is it better to be ignorant? You don't know. And so there are fewer reasons for you to think, I can't do that. But if you knew enough about video production, for example, let's say for a lot of people who know enough about video production, they might think, oh, geez, I've got to get the lighting right. I've got to get hair and makeup. I wouldn't have to worry about the hair, but I would have to worry about makeup.
Yeah.
I've got to get a producer making sure that we've got the run of show and we're staying on point. I've got to get the food and snacks laid out for everybody in between takes and all that. It's just a lot of stuff and it's just overwhelming. And if you're one guy, you're going to think, hey, I shouldn't do that. It's too expensive. It's too much work. I can't do all that stuff. And on top of that, I don't have the expertise to edit the thing in Final Cut or in Premiere. Versus the guy that doesn't know, who just Googles or ChatGPTs it and then gets, oh, use CapCut or pulls the first thing off the App Store. They search in the App Store and Video Editor and CapCut comes up first, or Captions AI comes up first. It works.
Yeah.
I was actually doing a video production with a professional hockey coach who's brilliant, by the way, who's in the NHL. And we had a professional videographer on site. We had lighting, we had sound, we had an assistant production guy, we had a producer on site, we had scripts printed in advance and all that. So everything, right? The whole shebang. I was actually there on the production site when I first downloaded Captions AI. And Captions AI, I was thinking, wait a second, this app's better than having all these people here. Because the person talking on camera, and we had a teleprompter and everything, and you can see the eyes going from side to side when you're reading a teleprompter,
Sure,
right?
sure. Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
It's the teleprompter effect. And if somebody's reading a script, they're looking down, right? And you can see them scanning while they're reading and talking. This is a couple of years ago now. Caption AI, for a long time, had this feature where it moved your eyes so you're looking straight at the camera. And it
Yeah.
made sure that your eyes weren't scanning from side to side. And it just made it better. Granted, I still don't have a solution for this raging sunlight behind me that keeps...
That's just the sun effect, man. That's just the sun filter.
Oh, it's right. It's an AI filter.
Yeah, totally. That's just the sun filter. Yeah, that's what I mean by technology is cool. For someone who is not media trained to be able to fix their eye at a certain point and deliver a line or deliver a script without scanning the teleprompter or look down means they have to get media training. Or he can just turn that piece of technology on and again, $20, $30 a month or whatever it might be, or just a one-time subscription just for that shoot. You've got that, which by the way, when it first came out, I tested the shit out of it and just tried doing some really weird video where I would move my head all the way over to see what it would do. I've got some pretty funny clips from back then.
We could share your screen right now with some of those.
I don't know where they are anymore. They're not worth keeping. Trust me.
All right.
As much as it was funny at the time, I'm not going to burn my storage for this slop for sure.
So speaking of the democratization enabled by taking like Pro Tools and professional working people, so people with those professional skill sets, like a videographer, what is happening right now is in the US today, in the United States of America today, 83% of jobs are at companies with over 20 employees. Now, if we think about the characteristics of a company with over 20 employees, If you have 20 employees and you're the owner of the business, or you're an executive, or you're a middle manager, in this climate, every single one of those companies has that one person, the owner at minimum, who is thinking which job functions can and should be streamlined or made redundant or eliminated, which people no longer need to be here because AI can do it for a fraction of that cost, or a robot can do it for a fraction of the cost. I saw this video on Instagram. I've been seeing a few of these today. It's this Chinese factory that shows its 6-axis robotic arm that can spray paint, can paint an object with precision. And it just runs around the machine, and it paints the whole thing. Then it shows like somebody from Turkey or from India or America or Germany or whatever observing while this Chinese machine paints this thing or does welding. There's a welding version of it as well. And then at the end of the machine, it says, this guy just ordered 200 of these machines. Guess what happens when they order 200 of those machines? That means that there are 200
or more people
who won't be working. These are the decisions that every single company is making right now around how can we be more efficient to weather the storm at minimum of these rising costs that have been hitting a lot of businesses. Tariffs are part of that, but just the cost of goods in general, the costs of services in general, professional workers in general. Try hiring a general contractor these days. It's just a lot. It's really hard to be able to afford everything that goes into being a business right now. Of course, they're looking for automation. And I think that applies to all of these companies with over 20 employees, but I think it applies even more so. 2 out of 3 jobs in the United States of America are at companies with over 100 employees. Now this is where it starts to get really clear. If you are a company with over 100 employees, if you're working at a company with over 100 employees, I guarantee you there are a handful of people, probably a dozen people, who are thinking day in, day out, their primary task, their primary professional reason for existing is to plan the automation, the AI transition of human work. And the assumption is, let's look at everything and try to streamline with AI as much as possible. So that's 2 out of 3 jobs are at companies that have a dozen people that are thinking about this every single day. That, I think, has got to be frightening for a lot of people that are working at a lot of these companies, but it's real and people can't ignore it.
Yeah, and minimally, even if AI is not, these companies aren't full technophiles, and there aren't just full of people in there thinking about how to disrupt themselves, which in itself is, I think, a fairly rare trait. There would be de facto operations teams within these companies, and operations teams' performance metrics come around efficiency.
Yep.
They wrap around how efficient are we as a business. If those companies are actively pursuing efficiency, because in a capitalistic society, what we value at organizations, most at least, is EBITDA and maximizing EBITDA. There are only 2 ways to maximize EBITDA. You increase your output while keeping your costs the same, or you keep your revenue the same, but you decrease your cost of producing that output. Ideally, you can do both. So these teams or these individuals who are looking at the efficiency of the business, as they're doing their research online, AI would be showing up everywhere. And as they are on LinkedIn or whatever other social media account, they would probably start seeing competitors or other companies within their space have employees share posts about playing around, testing, or fully implementing AI. So this train has left the station already. It's not even, it's because of the fact that we live, by and large, for most of us in a capitalistic society. Even good old communist China is a capitalistic society. So what point I'm trying to make here is the impetus for adopting AI isn't one of adopt AI for the sake of adopting AI. It supplements and actually pushes forward a very real business need, which is increase net profits.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you know who had a ton of incredibly sophisticated, well-educated, well-trained professionals that are looking at that bottom line or looking at the shape of future of work at those big companies. It's companies with over 1,000 employees. Look at companies with over 1,000 employees. They employ over 40% of working people in the United States. So that's nearly half of all jobs are at these companies that have a very sophisticated machine around looking at the bottom line, looking at how work is done, looking at how to make sure that these companies can decrease their costs, get more work done with less money spent, with less headcount. And you can't stick your head in the sand. You have to pull your head out, look at what's happening in the world around you, and recognize that there are no companies, big or small, that can assure you of a career. No company is thinking about your career development anymore as one of their top priorities. They are looking at the automation of as much cognitive work as possible. And that's happened already. And we're about to get, too many people are about to get blindsided by it. And that's why I think it's important that you and I have this talk here on this pod, because I think one of the core responsibilities that we have is to help open the eyes of a broader swath of society and help them realize that they have to be their own masters. They have to break free of the chains of employment. They have to create their own work. They have to create, period, full stop.
Yeah. It's crazy because do you think those layoffs would happen frog in boiling pot? Or do you think it would be more of a moment where it would be just very noticeable in these 1,000+ person companies and we start seeing on the news everywhere? How do you see that playing out?
It was Q4 of 2023. Meta laid off 20,000 people
I
in a
remember.
single announcement. And that was a big moment. A lot of those people still don't have jobs.
Efficiency.
Amazon laid off, I think, over 10,000 jobs. Microsoft laid off a bunch, and the domino started toppling. But what's crazy is that now we're still talking about layoffs being announced of 9,000, 10,000 people, right? Thousands of people. People aren't noticing. It's just, yeah, of course. And it's happening in these really mind-boggling. Can you hold the idea of 20,000 people in your head? I can't hold the idea of 20,000 people. Just try to imagine those 20,000 people, and we can't.
I actually can, because the way that my brain envisions it is, I don't know the last time you went to a live concert and that moment when everyone, like the show's over, everyone walks out to go look for an Uber or a taxi, walk to their car, like that many people walking out of the stadium or a venue. I go, oh my God, imagine instead of walking out of a stadium, they're walking out of like an office building with cardboard boxes, that typical movie scene. The cardboard box, one small little potted plant, maybe some manila folders, but 20,000 of them, man.
It's happening. Yeah. I think these days we see less of that because of remote work. But I remember it's probably the early 2000s, Nortel, they were one of the biggest companies in Canada, and they no longer are. I remember on University Avenue in Toronto, I was walking by their office when there was a stream of people coming out of the office building carrying boxes. That was what you just described. You're looking at hundreds, thousands of people streaming out of a building with their boxes and wondering how they're going to adapt. Fortunately, the economy continued to do well and there were other jobs available. That's why there's all this techno-optimism where people are saying there will be other jobs created. But I got to say, no, there won't be other jobs created, at least not anywhere near at the scale that is necessary to replenish those displaced workers. The only way, so no jobs won't be created for you, but you can create your own job. You must create your own job is the idea. And then I think the beautiful thing that will start to happen is we'll move from, and I had the slide up a moment ago, and I'll pop it up one more time. We'll move towards an economy, society where that solopreneur section right there at the bottom, right now it's something like 6% of jobs are people that are just working by themselves. And what is that? I'm guessing it's probably like 16% are jobs at companies with fewer than 20 employees. I think that what happens is when there's a massive shift towards solopreneurs, we're going to see those companies grow, and a lot of their functions will be AI functions, but some of the functions will be human functions. And so we'll see lots and lots of companies that are really small start to hire moderate numbers of people. Guess who they're going to prioritize? They're going to prioritize people who have actually built something.
Right. Yeah.
And that applies to, I think the smartest accountant that I know, the smartest CPA I know, left PwC to become the CEO of his own company, creating fashion accessories. He created these laceless shoe tying systems, sold millions of units after cutting up his Gucci jacket to take the buttons off of it. One day he's sitting down in his living room, takes his Gucci jacket, looks at his shoes, looks at his Gucci jacket, and then cuts up his Gucci jacket to take the buttons out. Then he puts them onto his shoes with these elastic bands. And he realized, oh, if you get stretchy laces with these buttons and a buttoning system, then you can have really cool looking laceless shoes. And he sold millions of those. And now he runs a fashion brand. I think they came out with the most popular winter jacket in South Korea, and then a cosmetics line. And I think they're one of the top sellers of mattresses in Korea, sleepwear. This is all the work of an accountant who got out of that like rigid one domain and built a business. And guess what? His training and his knowledge and his specialization probably helps him a ton. But I think it's brilliant that we see people, a good group of early adopters in the past couple of decades, more and more shunning even their established path to success and embracing entrepreneurship. And that was made possible in large part because cost of starting business plummeted. But with AI, if it came down 10x in the past decade, AI decreases the cost of starting a business another 100x today from that 10x decrease. So it's there for everybody because it's democratized now.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. For anyone who's playing along at home, you might have heard of this one place called Y Combinator. Pretty famous place. And if you've never heard of Y Combinator, you probably would have heard of the startups that come out of Y Combinator. Airbnb, I think, being a name that you can drop and everyone goes, that came out of YC. YC put out their fall 2025 call out for startups. They only started doing this, I think, maybe sometime last year. Effectively, they have their partners put out these little videos as shorts and go, okay, we are looking for these types of startups. Right at the very top for fall 2025, retraining workers for the AI economy. We talk a lot about the AI revolution in terms of models, chips, software, and that's where we have a problem. We're focused on the race for AI talent. We also have a shortage for skilled people in this type of space. So how do you teach someone to weld or fix pipes via AI? They're talking about physical labor where AI is augmented somehow. It could be AR matched with a few other different tools to be able to do possibly some type of live AI trainer or coach watching you as you do your work and giving you live feedback and stuff like that. But it's interesting to see how the startup accelerator, incubator, I don't know what you would classify YC as, but a place like YC that gets to have swaths of people studying what is coming down the pike and where the next unicorns would be in this type of software world, or at least in the high tech world, have this at the top of the fall 25 category.
I think that short term, I agree that there is an increased need for plumbers, electricians, welders, et cetera, for the next 5 years. I think that's real based on what I just read. And I had seen that before. So this is just my hot take. Plumbers, electricians, welders are job types that are going to be in demand. And we're seeing lots of layoffs outside of those professions. And so we should retool, train these people to become these kind of high demand workers, electricians, plumbers, and welders. And while I agree that those jobs will be in demand for the next 5 years, we're talking about, when we talk about training people for jobs in the sense that human society views job training, we're talking about training for careers. And so I think that what's missing from their blog post is really clarifying the distinction between a job and a career. They're talking about retooling and training people for the next 5 years. And yeah, there's limited good in that. There is good in that, but I think it's limited because what happens after those 5 years? Are these jobs truly resilient? Is it boiling water, frog in boiling water, or is it like a sharp cutoff where suddenly I think that there will be a sharp cutoff where we look at all these jobs now we encourage all these people to take, to train for, and then overnight, poof, they're gone. Because infrastructure changes are happening right now. The advances in humanoid robotics and really fine-tuned motor control are happening right now. And the cognitive layer of being able to handle site-specific variances, because if we look at what plumbers and electricians do, there's like the planning side of it, which is hard, and partly because of the infrastructure, the way that we do infrastructure. But it's also hard handling on-site the really diverse range of, it's like you open up a can of worms, right? It's unique when you land on site. These things are things that human electricians and plumbers bring to the table, but those are also things that AI will be able to do very well. So I think that we're seeing more of the same. YC and their ilk for over a decade now, and human society at large have been saying for decades now, study computer science.
Yes.
Go learn to program. Guess what? You graduate with a comp sci degree. I had a hockey dad have a chat with me and say he's got a son who graduated in comp sci. And my first reaction was like, oh no, because of all of the time and money that gets poured into getting that comp sci degree, where families go into debt for this stuff, right?
Yeah.
We're talking $400,000, $500,000 spent on getting that degree because the inherent promise, it's more than just implied. It's really fucking clearly said and understood that if you study comp sci, you've got a brilliant career ahead of you. That's
Yellow brick road.
It's okay, now go study to be a plumber or electrician and create these apps to help more people study to be plumbers and electricians. And that's good. I think that's bad. I think that promise should not be made.
Meanwhile, on the comp sci side of things, this just came out start of the week.
Yeah. Window increased to what is it, 1 million?
With new capacity, developers can load code bases.
I increase. Yeah, it's 1 million. First line is 1 million tokens of context in a single request.
Gemini's been 1 million for a while, and I've been enjoying that million, and I still haven't hit that anywhere close to that cap. But 75,000 lines of code, and they laying Claude to understand the architecture and suggest improvements across the entire system rather than individual files.
I'm paying $200 to Claude.
Oh, why you went max?
Yes. Even without coding, if you are iterating through a strategy document, like the seed of an idea, you iterate through to expand it out into more and more. Yeah, you have to use max because you're going to hit the context window limit. And even then at max,
But you hit the limit.
and that experience actually is what got me to start using the API and building. Yeah, I think that Claude is just a superpower. And I personally prefer Claude for most things over ChatGPT. Here's the thing that ChatGPT does really well. They were first to market. And so they captured the imaginations of a lot of people and they became synonymous with the idea of AI. They also have a ton of money. Like they are very well capitalized. And so I think that a lot of people think ChatGPT first for most things. After spending a lot of time inside of ChatGPT, both inside of the app and through API, and after spending a lot of time inside of Claude and also a lot of time with Gemini, my default for thinking AI is I turn to Claude for everything. And then I may supplement with doing things inside of ChatGPT, doing things inside of Gemini.
What makes you prefer Claude over GPT in terms of the responses that you get?
So I actually think that it's like the context window doesn't feel like the big critical lever. That's a big differentiator. I think that for a while, Claude had a smaller context window. I think the default is 64,000. And until a few weeks ago, it was using the beta header to get up to 200,000 context window. And now use the beta header to get up to 1 million. And I think that while it helps to have more context, it absolutely does. Through context chaining, which is like summarizing the work or passing along the right documents for context, you're able to get to a very good outcome with even a smaller context window of like 200,000. The bigger difference is, I think it's in what makes Claude closer to the way that humans think. And I think back, I heard Dario say in some interview, he said, somewhere inside of Anthropic, there are like these very small number of lines of code. I can't remember the exact number. Was it just dozens of lines of code that are worth hundreds of millions of dollars? And I thought about that when I read it, and I thought, I wonder what he means by code. And I think that what he's actually talking about is the system prompts, the internal prompts that are inside of ChatGPT, the ontology around, depending on first, when a user prompts, first let's run a system prompt to try to truly understand what the user is prompting. So I think that some prompt sanitization or some extrapolation from the prompt is something that ChatGPT does, Claude does really well. But then it's a matter of, how do I think about the problem?
Right.
That's structuring how to think about the problem. And so first interpreting the type of problem it is, and then choosing how to think about the problem, creating these playbooks. Anthropic has done a fantastic job of creating these playbooks around how to think about certain prompts, almost any kind of prompt from the user. I was having a chat with a friend about a legal issue where humans weren't able to come up with the answer to this legal issue that came up during a complex negotiation. And lawyers have access to Harvey AI, right? Harvey also couldn't come up with the answer,
Right.
an acceptable solution. Now, eventually, after a certain amount of time passed, humans were able to come up with the solution, right? Through multiple rounds of negotiation, discussion, everything. But when I thought about the parameters, the information that they had at the stage when it would have been ideal to quickly provide this solution to this business/legal issue, I wondered, can AI solve the problem? So I tested it with ChatGPT. I tested it with Claude, and we knew that Harvey had failed already because the lawyers had tried it with Harvey.
Right.
So now you have a vanilla ChatGPT and vanilla Claude. I provided it with a prompt with the right amount of context, right? And the way that I structured the context mattered a lot. Provided it to ChatGPT, it didn't come up with a solution. Provided it to Claude, and it solved it. So the combination of smarter prompting from the human with the way that Claude has been tuned, Anthropic, I think, just did a fantastic job. So I'm a really big fan of using Anthropic to get better answers, I think.
Yeah, nice. It's and just to bring it home, that is such a great way for regular Joe, regular Jane to get introduced to the world of language models and AI, just to go, okay, I've got a challenge in front of me. Let me go to some type of a note taker or just doc tool and just write out a prompt. You are an expert, whoever, give it some context, just do some internet research and figure out how to phrase that prompt, paste it into a couple different models and see what comes back, enter the conversation with each one. And that already can help someone, a regular non-technical person or someone who isn't into AI, go, ooh, I start to see the differences here. Some of them would ask me a clarifying question before proceeding. Some others would just go ahead and just run the whole darn thing without checking in with me and give me all kinds of answers. Oh, this one started hallucinating. That is not even factual. So that is such a great way to start to get into self-discovering for yourself and having that little tasting menu. Then you can start doing really funky stuff like taking 3 different Excel files, throwing it in as attachments and asking it all kinds of different questions around comparing data across files that aren't cleaned. It hasn't been sanitized by some type of analyst, like data analyst or engineer or anything like that. And it can just give you some interesting answers also. Because think a large barrier that I have observed with a lot of the conversation that I had so far this year around AI adoption have been one of 2 things. One is overwhelm. It changes all the time. So I don't know which are the fundamentals for me to wrap my head around. 1 week it's Claude Code. Before that, it was Cursor and Windsurf. And then there's Google CLI. And then they're throwing in RAG and CAG and DAG. And what the heck are those different things? So I don't know where to start. And I don't know which parts are ever evolving and which parts are core fundamental pieces. That's one. Second one is I don't know where to apply it. I saw something where some guy took a photo of his mom and generated Brad Pitt next to her, showed it to mom, and mom was excited. That doesn't help me at work. So there's this use case portion of it. And then I think the third one would be for them to go, I don't have someone to show me how. So those tend to be the conversations. Or then the final one is, it's just not good enough yet. What we're talking about here is a big part of it is encouraging people to start leaning in and going in that direction. Those tend to be the friction points that I've come across in conversation around what discourages them from actually leaning in.
I think I'm hearing questions about how AI can be used and how AI can be used better. And having heard this question a number of times, what my thinking has evolved towards is this. If you take a 12-year-old kid and you make them the CEO of Nike, and I use Nike because recently there was the story of someone who applied to be the CEO of Nike, right? And got rejected, of course, but then Nike actually emailed them back saying, hey, we actually want you to be an intern. This random guy who said, I'm in the UK, and I think he was probably frustrated with Nike for whatever reason, and he applied to be the CEO. And then the current CEO of Nike started his career as an intern at Nike, and he worked his way up. So who knows, this guy who's now going to be an intern at Nike, maybe he'll be a future CEO at Nike. But you take a 12-year-old, and if you make him the CEO of Nike, chances are his first order of priorities when he gets to be the CEO, the boss of Nike, would be to get like a room full of the coolest kicks, sneakers, Jordans, whatever, and say, I want to make these custom. And so that's what he'd be thinking about, right? You take some random guy from New York, and he's really passionate because he had some bad experiences with Nike, some really good experiences. And these things that he's really passionate about that are important to him will suddenly become the priority at Nike. That's what he'll start working on, right? Maybe he'll have had a bad experience buying shoes online. And so all of a sudden he'll say, buying shoes online sucks. And so let's all think about that. And that'll be everything. Or when I call customer service, people don't answer. So all of a sudden he's going to hire a bunch of people to answer phones or something like that, right? But to be a great CEO of Nike, it requires thinking bigger. It requires understanding the world. It requires being interested in understanding the world on an ongoing basis. It requires understanding Nike's customers. It's multiple facets of the problem of growth for Nike, driving value and by extension, the CEO. So I think that the reason why we see people having varying degrees of success in using AI, it's because there are varying degrees of people's ability to be a CEO. Everybody who uses ChatGPT is suddenly empowered to be their own CEO, the CEO of their own life. And if we think about what a CEO is doing, is they are thinking about what should we be looking towards? In which direction should we be pointing? They are thinking about what are the problems we will face? What are the competitors? What are the cost issues? What are the supply chain issues? All of these problems. they're considering. They are thinking, now, who are the people that I need around me in order to do all of that, to solve all those problems and to go where we need to go? Who are the people we need to hire? And that person will think, and you said this earlier, you said when you prompt, one of the things you write is to the AIs, you write, you are an expert movie director who has won multiple Academy Awards in the romantic comedy genre. You have a preference for XYZ. Your fears and aspirations are A, B, and C. And then you write the prompt, right? And then your objective is, boom, that is the profile of a person that you are hiring as the CEO. When you are prompting as the CEO, depending on how well
you instruct,
depending on how well you point it at the right vision, how well you define the problems, how well you choose the people, the persona that you want the AI to embody, how well you define that, that is how you get better output from AI. And get better at being a CEO. You get better by being a CEO.
Yeah, no kidding. Like 100%.
And anybody who can tap with their thumbs, or can talk into a microphone, or can type on a keyboard, anybody can be a CEO in an instant with $0 spent. Man, this hour and a half that you and I spent together every week is something I look forward to, because the conversation we're having right now matters so much. You've asked such an important question, and I think that we hit all the right notes that are going to help a ton of people start empowering themselves more and shift from the mindset of the world is happening to me, AI is happening to me. A really smart guy, a coach in hockey, and one of the things that he said that really resonates with me, he asks, are you at cause or are you at effect? Are you at effect? If you're at effect, you're a person who's thinking, oh, the world is happening to me. Our competitor took the job, from a competitor beat us on the bid, or I was unlucky that day because that car was cornering too fast and it went through a puddle and it sprayed me. The professor doesn't like me. The teacher doesn't like the way I look. My friends are all taller than me, so they're better basketball players than me. Whatever it is, that's being at effect. If you're going to be at cause, I think that, and I'm soundbiting it, right? When I say be the CEO of your life. But what I'm really saying is to be at cause. Don't just let ChatGPT figure it all out for you. Structure the work of ChatGPT. Define who Claude is going to be for you. Define the work, define the vision. Choose the right vision. What are you spending time talking to Claude about? What are you spending time GPTing about? Are you spending time asking it to go shopping for you? Is that the purpose of your life, to be a net consumer? I would challenge you to, as well, anybody listening to this, to choose not only to be the CEO, but to choose to be a net creator. Create more than you consume. If you are consuming more than you create, that is a surefire path to
Town. Yeah.
Probably, I'm no clinical therapist or psychologist, psychiatrist, but I got to think that's got to contribute heavily to depression. If you're a person who is a net consumer, if Netflix is your priority over creating, spend time shaping your thoughts, spend time inside of your own head, spend time imagining the world, build worlds in your mind, and then express them and put GPT and Claude to work. And then you will be empowered.
Absolutely. It's synonymous to that would be pick your flavor. You've got the hockey version. You've got the life coach version, which is Tony Robbins. Is life happening to you or for you? Or you've got, if you want to pick the tech bro version, pick the Naval Ravikant high agency little interview snippet that made the rounds a few years ago. He talks about people with high agency and taking life into their own hands and solving problems and moving ahead and being resourceful. as much as the technology changes, and maybe we can start to land the plane here, the core principle stays the same. The technology, there's a slight tweak in here, which I think prior to this technology, humans created technology as tools. This one time, it just happens to be that the tool might start driving itself and doing a whole bunch of other things that meets or exceeds human capabilities. But the core principle still stays the same. The resourceful will find a way. For those who are intending to create or to just start tinkering around, have some intentional consumption and go watch the resourceful. Guess what? They're putting a lot of content online. So just type in some search terms and the rabbit hole is there for the taking. This is the stuff that blows my mind. When I think about the internet, when I think about laptops, and I think about these LLMs, it's a bit of the same way I think about Air Jordans back when I was a kid. And I go, wait, this pair of sneakers is the exact same pair of sneakers that the NBA players are wearing to be able to do that? Man, I should be able to do that. Same thing with the internet. Like, we're afforded the internet, and anyone with a laptop that can watch this, a smartphone, a laptop, and those $20 a month or $200 a month tools are the same tools that all these other really resourceful people are using to absolutely fuck shit up in the best way possible.
Yeah.
So almost like no excuses, right?
Yep. Now is not a time to be singing, "If I had $1 million."
No,
It's
totally.
because if only I had $1 million, if only I had an expert videographer, if only I had a programmer, a technical co-founder, if only I had enough money to pay for the MOQ, the minimum order quantity for that line of cosmetics that I'm imagining, if only I had the money to buy that jacquard fabric instead of the polyester fabric to make my merch, if only. No, you have the
Yeah, it's
most
here.
important ingredients to your success. You have this, and you have all of human knowledge at your fingertips,
Yeah.
able to go to work for you right now. And
Yeah,
you don't have to
seriously.
pay them a penny.
It's nuts.
It costs a fraction of what employers
Yeah.
paid people to do work in the 1900s.
Yeah, for sure. It's wild. Can't wait for the next one.
All right, dude. Let's talk again next Friday.
See you, everybody.